This is some advice on how to complete round four. So by this point, you've played 3 rounds of the team competition, and you're either doing very well against the other students in the class, or you're doing quite poorly. If you're doing quite poorly, you should really watch this video to the entire end of the video. If you're doing very well, you've probably learned most of the things that I'm going to say here, because I'm saying a lot of things that I said from the other videos, but I'm reinforcing them and giving some ideas about the 4th round. So as we start out, you want to review your points for year 3. So my total points here were 515, and I was able to increase revenues, improve my quick ratio, improve my debt ratio, improve my profit margins. I had a harder time improving my asset turnover because I purchased a lot of assets last round with the factories and the operational investments. So it's to be understood that it was difficult to increase my return on assets and total asset turnover. But I was able to increase my earnings per share, and I was able to increase my market capitalization, and this is just the stock price times the outstanding shares. And I was able to increase my book value by a little bit, no, by a lot, 60%. And my forecasts were mostly accurate. I increased my operational investments, and I had a cash surplus. So I did 500 points, which is really good for round 3. Before I would move into round 4, I would review my full assessment page, looking to see how I did in most categories, and I did pretty well in most categories. Then, of course, I would review my charts, specifically my performance charts, to see how exactly did I do. Specifically, I'm really interested in my sales. So my forecasting was very close to my demand in most of my vehicles. So knowing from the student manual down here, I know the growth rates, so I have a better idea of where to move my forecasts. And the forecasts are different for every team depending on, this is the practice game, which is different than the team competition you're doing. So the competition is so intense in the team competition area that it's difficult to a little bit more difficult to forecast than when you're doing the individual practice. Of course, in the industry, I would check out the other teams in the industry, see how they're doing, if they're doing better than me, and my financials are backed up, could look those over, and then finally, I go into year 4 for the sales. So here in year 4, I'm going to be looking at where I left off, how the customer expectation ranges have changed, and also trying to keep in mind how I want to please my customers by trying to have a higher end on the things that are more important to my customers, like fuel economy for economy class car. And I have a big increase in my operational cost reduction, which should help to maintain or improve my profit margin. So I'm going to put some numbers in here and see how I do. And then sales price in. Okay, so I had a nice jump in my profit margin. I'm very happy with that. And I'm going to scale up my sales forecast, and try and do the same thing for this is the sedan. Let's see where. Okay, so here I didn't improve my profit margin. So if I left it like that, my investors would be most upset with me. So I'm going to have to, here I could scale back luxury features since it's only 5% of their buying criteria. They're not buying the car based on the luxury features. So that can help a little bit. I could scale this back. And I can scale this back. I don't know if I can go down to 100. Nope, I can't. So there are limits to what a car needs to operate. So, okay, so I got it up 3 percentage points, which isn't too bad. I try to go at, as close to improving as high as 5 if I can, and that's not always easy to do. Don't mind the car horns in the background. Okay, so this is terrible. So I'm going down to 40%. So if I let this go through, I would do very badly. So what happened here is just a transposition. I had the wrong price. So let me change the price. And now that's still not much of an improvement. So I'm going to have to, unfortunately, this is the one area I could scale back a lot in and get that up somewhat. Scale these back a bit. Okay, now I've got up 6%. Maybe I'll move this up a little bit. That's really important. Okay, so I'm about 4% up here. I'm going to be aggressive. I wouldn't copy my forecasts. I'm not really putting a lot of effort into making sure they're 100% accurate, because in other videos I've described pretty succinctly how to forecast and the proper way of doing it. Here I'm just kind of throwing some numbers in because I don't want to make it super easy for you just to copy my forecast. So again, if you copy my forecast, you could be very disappointed because I'm not putting too much effort into really figuring out the best forecast I should have for my vehicle. I'm more focused on getting my profit margins to be improved, because that's where I'm finding most students are failing. Most students are failing to really improve their profit margins. And that's hurting them a great deal in their points when their profit margins don't go up. So here I am just really having to trim quite a bit. Okay, so I finally have a small improvement, which means I'm going to have to invest more money in my operational cost reductions, because it's just getting too hard on the luxury vehicle to really surpass my profit margins like I was doing before. So that is, my car is a little subpar, so I should probably factor that in a little bit with my forecast, given the car's kind of crappy. So I'm going to submit my sales data, and then I'm going to come back and do marketing last. That's a very time-consuming issue, and I'm going through this step by step to really help you to succeed. So I want you, to show you that it's not really the hardest thing to do, this simulation. It just takes a little dedication and a little focus to do well. And the focus is watching these videos. The focus could be playing practice rounds again and again, unlimited practice rounds to try to improve your score, so you can get a better sense of putting some effort in to do well in the simulation. And there are, quite frankly, I do get emails from people, and I ask them, have you read the user guide? Have you watched the videos? No, I haven't, but I still don't understand why I'm not doing well. And I said, well, because you haven't put a lot of effort into learning the simulation and watching. I know these videos can be boring, but it gives you a good idea of things you can do to help improve, and some ideas as I go through each of the areas. And you notice that as you go through the simulation and the sales are really ramping up, you are having to buy more and more production plants, and that's expensive. So, but it's not a bad problem to have if demand is there to really increase the amount of cars you sell. Then you buy the factories. You don't want to be cheap about it. You want to expand the company when the demand is there. Okay, so I'm going to submit my production. Okay, so now I'm in the finance page. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and see what my cash position is. So I have $32 million in surplus, and I'm going to start to pay down some long-term debt with that money. And this will help my debt ratios by retiring some debt in both of the areas. So I'll put 6,006, and also retire some stock. I'll buy back some stock. So buying back stock, what that does is it reduces the amount of outstanding shares. You see, I went from 10,300,000 to 10,200,000, and that's going to help improve my stock price and help improve my earnings per share. And retiring my long-term and short-term debt will help to improve my debt ratios. So I still have a nice, $15 million cash surplus. So I'm going to run with that for year 4. Now, some teams, there was 3 or 4 teams in our class competition, students that just didn't even complete last year. They just left it completely blank. I went in, checked, it was completely blank, so I had to force them forward to be in line with all the other students and then process the round. So make sure you take the time. I mean, it's not too hard to forget. It's every Wednesday. It's twice a week on the same weekdays. The schedule, I emailed the schedule out a few times already, so just take a note, put a schedule on your phone of when these rounds are due so you don't miss a round. So I'm going to complete, now here, I'm not competing with you in the team competition. I'm just basically playing a practice game to kind of give you ideas. So if I complete year 4, let's see how I did. And remember that the points aren't equal points every round. They shouldn't be shooting for equal points every round, because some rounds your company may be building a position, investing, so it's harder to earn points. And some rounds you're reaping in the rewards of earlier investments. So how I did in this round is 175 points. So that's not terrific. It doesn't totally torpedo my cumulative score, but this was certainly a building round. So is a good opportunity to explore what I had done wrong. So my revenues did go up. My quick ratio, because I paid down my debt ratios improved. My profit margins improved on the gross, but they sank on the operational and the net because advertising had gotten a lot more expensive. And that also, I bought a lot of assets, but didn't produce as much profits as I thought, so that hurt my total asset turnover, my return on equity, and my return on assets. Even though my earnings per share went up, but it only went up 30%. I'm used to much larger gains in earnings per share. Now, on my forecast side, my forecast was very weak in sedan and truck, and that hurt me. I lost 30 points in that, combined with having a surprise deficit, and I lost 100 points there. So that's a 200-point swing. If I had a surplus, this would have been 375 points. But see, it's so critical to be careful of your deficit. So what happened to cause this having these bad points? Well, if I go to my production, I'll see quite clearly that I have 77 vehicles in inventory here. I have 1,000 vehicles in inventory, so I have 1,000 unsold vehicles in sedan, and I have 922 unsold vehicles in truck. So what basically happened is I greatly overforecasted. Now I did this on purpose. I knew that in the sedan area I had jumped from, if I look at, let's just go into the industry, and we'll see here that this is, I'll go back to year 3. Okay, so click here to year 3. Sedan, my sedan sales were 4,500. There's no way I'm going from 4,500 to 7,000 in one round. So going into round 4, I jumped that to, I only had 5,600 sold, which is a nice increase, but there's no way that I would ever sell 7,000 vehicles on a sedan. So you have to be very careful when you forecast. You over forecast too aggressively like that, and what can occur is that surprise situation. So if I go to the student manual and I look at the forecasting for year 4, let's scroll down here, and this is why you always, so year 4, sedan should only come in around 5,700. I know why would I ever schedule 7,000? That was just really poor forecasting. So there's an example where if you're not really paying attention to how you're forecasting or what you're doing, these unsold vehicles they're not gonna be sold, they're not gonna translate into sales, they're not gonna translate into profits. So that pro forma financial statement I had showing a $15 billion surplus, that never materialized because the promises I made on sales didn't materialize. And now I'm left with a year where I missed my goal on points. So is this going to kill me as trying to do well as far as points in the game? No, absolutely not. So I had a poor year, right? I'm still at 1,800 points. I have 2 years to go, and I need to get, I believe I can easily get 400 in each year, which would bring me to 2,600. So I believe I can easily do that. So even though 1 year you fall behind, doesn't ruin your chances. You can still bounce back, and it's even easier to bounce back now because my results are, when I do a year-over-year comparison to my results, they'll be much easier to beat a weak year 4 than a strong year 3. Sort of like, you had a 4.0 semester in year 3 and you went to a B average or 3.0 semester. Now you have a chance to really improve those scores. So this didn't really sink me as a situation. So there, I'm presenting something slightly different this time in advice for year 4, and that's what happens if you stumble and you've made a mistake such as gravely over forecasting. Well, next round when I do work on year 5 and I go into production, I can retrofit those cars and they'll be in my inventory. So whatever I forecast, I can have a chance to resell them or recoup that cash and recoup those profits and hopefully recoup my points for year 5. Okay, I hope that you're doing well in the simulation and that you had some insights from this video. And you see how disastrous it can be if you don't pay attention closely to what you're doing and you make a mistake like drastically over forecasting one vehicle because you're not paying attention to what the market demand is or your results. So you really have to look at what you did last year, what the student user guide says an average gauge is, and how you feel you're going to move in the next year. So keep playing those practice rounds to get better at the simulation, because you can reset them when you get to the end and you can try again. So that way when you go into the team competition, that you the area where you're playing against the other students in class, the area that I process manually every twice a week in the winter here, that your score improves. So, and this is really what you're in business school for, to figure out how does a company work, how does sales, marketing, production, and finance work together to generate a company that makes profits. So this game is really critical to your financial education of understanding how a business works and understanding the amount of effort it takes to make sure your business is going to be successful. And you have a good gauge here against your peers to see how you're doing against other students in this business class. Okay, thank you for your time. I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.